Welcome to Iblis Manifestations. All right then, Mr. Vincent Crowley, sir, welcome to Iblis Manifestations. It is an absolute honor to have you on the show. I've been anticipating this one for quite a while. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I have also been looking forward to it. I've admired your work from afar, and I first discovered your band on YouTube, and when I usually see something I like, I make a comment, and I gave much respect. We're doing the battle against the Abrahamic religions that plague us. You are definitely in the trenches, and we're in the trenches, and it's easy for us in America to battle Christianity and this, that, and the other thing, while we still have a lot of freedoms. But you could get persecuted, you could have been killed. I mean, that's as fucking metal as it gets, brother. So I totally respect you.
Well, listen, brother, I very much appreciate that, and of course it doesn't go without acknowledging the fact that I'm also well aware of your own history of battling the same things, should we say, and it's an honor to hear that, and to me, you know what? I think, without sounding overly presumptuous, I think that we are both probably on a very similar pursuit. Is the pursuit of doing what's right, and what's good for us as humans, and our progression, and more importantly, our liberties. Which is not something that just lands on your doorstep. It's often something that you really have to fight for it. So this is a part of that fight, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just watched recently the interview you did with Jackie, and it's funny, some of the statements you made. I very much reflected on, and it just everything is an evolution in life. Bands are evolutions, people are evolutions, and I believe if you are the same person you were, a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, going, you are not evolving. And as you mentioned about Satanist, I no longer consider myself a Satanist anymore. I resonate, and I really I consider myself living a satanic lifestyle for the philosophy of Satanism. I don't consider Satanism a religion, because I think when it took that name and title, there's nothing good with the name religion. There's none. There's always some type of manipulation or corruption or some kind of. You can follow the ideologies and the teachings and the beliefs on your own, but when you need to use a certain specific phrase, I even though I was very much into it back in the day, and and I've just evolved past that. And it's not like I've, you know, totally flipped the script and I don't believe in most of the stuff. There's a lot of the structure that I got from, the Satanic Bible from LaVey, the philosophy, that resonates and rings with me to this day. But you have to expand. You have to go beyond that. And it doesn't matter what direction, the left-hand path has always been considered the satanic path. I've traveled the left-hand path, and I found out that you take any path you need to go to get to your destination, and never limit yourself. And that's pretty much where I am now. It's not a crazy change, but to me, it's been a massive change to kind of get to know myself, to embrace myself, to really reflect on, what Carl Jung, mentioned as the shadow, that part of you that you need to embrace and accept and figure out how that goes with your being.
I very much respect that, brother, and I really appreciate you sharing that so openly and honestly, and I think that it's important that we have these conversations, especially in the case of the music style that we surround ourselves with, because I think that the growth is essential, and I think it's important that we kind of go through these different phases, and I think that it's also important to realize when you go towards certain topics of discussion, or where you sort of attach yourself to certain different ideologies or pathways, left and path, should we say, at this time, I think that in a sense, it's important to understand why you do that to begin with. Okay. And I think that to reflect on the conversation I had with Jackie, just for anyone here who's not listened to it, and of course I appreciate you taking the time to listen to that as well. It was a great conversation. Jack's a great guy. I think that, it's always, when we do these things, it's meant to be for the pursuit of something better. And I think that's kind of the important thing to underline there, that it's not the pursuit of being destructive just for the sake of being destructive, but it's to actually let go of the mental, physical, and even spiritual shackles of what we were confined by at an earlier stage. Okay, now in your case, that of course being Christianity, and in my case, it being Islam on a very strong level. And I think that it's important that that we use the exercise of the shadow self as a tool to surpass that. Okay, it's not to become about the shadow, but it's only that when you embrace the shadow, then you get to progress forward. The seeds of light are always first planted in darkness. And this is the process of life as a whole. And the very interesting thing is that a lot of the Abrahamic religions, okay, and at least, if we want to, let's talk about the two sort of poles here. If you want to talk about Christianity and Islam, we can talk about the positive philosophies that actually exist in both, because they wouldn't be as relevant as they are if that wasn't a thing. But ultimately, a huge fault that I find with both of them is the fact that they completely detach us from our shadow self, which I actually think makes for the shit to grow because we're not exercising it. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
No, that's absolutely true. And to think that, we have to follow these set of rules and sins, things that we have to feel guilt about. And I think you made a very true statement with, there's a way to know that shadow part of you and embrace it, but also know what to bring into the world inside yourself too. Because if we all just did exactly what we were basically born to do if we were just like an animal on the ground with no perimeters, or there would be a lot of different types of living in here, and you still have to structure your life to go with it, understand it, and also kind of confront it. Because if you do have things in the back of your mind, in your consciousness, that may be a negative part of you that would be negative towards you, it's not going to benefit you if you embrace it and try to bring it out. So it's all about really getting to know what fits the mold you're in and what you as a person feel comfortable with it without like living in these perimeters. You know, growing up in a Christian household, sins were, you know, it was always like, we do bad, you pray, you get forgiven, Jesus will, you know, we're flawed, we're this and that. And throughout my whole upbringing, I questioned this, and I would say, well, if God's perfect, why did he make flaws? Oh, free will, no, it's like, you know, if you're going to make an album, you don't go make a half-ass album, let people, you know, listen to what they want, and It's if this almighty creator has the knowledge and the power to do all this stuff, why didn't he just create a society of perfection that lived in perfect harmony? And it just doesn't make sense. And I'm sure with Islam, which it's funny because I live in Columbus, Ohio, and there has always been an Islamic presence here. It's just slowly growing. And you can see the culture, how different it is. I mean, the way they treat women, the just the attitudes. And if you're not Islamic, you know, they just give you this look, and which, you know, fine, keep to yourself or whatever, but trying to push their beliefs and culture onto society as the thing is just as bad as Christianity or Judaism. You know, I think religion and politics are like the same beast. And they're all connected somehow. If you really think about it, there's always this kind of connection, and the main goal is control. And you lose your individuality when you get caught up on that stuff, because you have to be a part of the group, you have to be a part of the system, you have to be a part of the church or whatever you have. So that's kind of where I'm thinking with the whole, you know, the difference with the religions and stuff with not embracing the self. I really think you need to shed all that shit to get to really be yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think those are extremely valid points. And you mentioned the key word here, which is individuality. And I think one of the biggest problems of a lot of these religions is the fact that they're devoid of individuality. Because let's say, for example, if Islam, hypothetically speaking, this is, of course, definitely not the case, but let's say if Islam was just a case of it's the religion of the individual, okay? So as one person, if you decide to, I don't know, quit drinking and not do certain things or whatever, or like follow the teachings of Muhammad, all that. I mean, even then, actually, it's kind of pretty shitty. But like, let's say if it was just the one person doing that, I would kind of be less bothered by it, you know. But it's the fact that it is wired into the religion, it's ingrained in it, you know, that it, like, I always say that not all Muslims are bad people. Of course, I've met some fantastic humans who identify with that religion, but the problem is that the well is poisoned. So the actual well of ideologies that you get your faith from, it's fucking poisoned and it's deadly and it's entirely counterproductive to humanity and human progression as a whole. And then, as you mentioned, never mind the treatment of women, even animals and different things, and anyone who thinks differently to the religion. So thus creating a scenario where many people who identify by the religion, it's like, you know, it's like a mind virus, you know, it's like almost like a weird fungal type of infection, you know, that controls the mind of the various different hosts. And, you know, and it essentially turns them into an invasive species. This is the way I observe this religion.
I want to make a point of what you just said, too. There is a difference between someone, because, again, we go back to evolving as a person. In the early days, I had no interest in conversing with Christians. I had no interest unless it was some kind of, you know, either debate or confrontation. That's the only thing I wanted to deal with Christians at one point, you know.
Unless it was Bob Larson, yes?
Yeah. Now that guy, we'll get into that later, but
we'll get into that, yes.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I'm an online fitness coach. I make programs for people that'll cover their training and nutrition. And of course, you know, I used to be someone who was extremely unfit, out of shape. You know, I was 119 kilos before, or for the American listeners, that makes it 262 pounds. And I lost about a third of that weight. And I have since kept it off and actually become educated enough to become a fitness coach so that I can help others do the same thing. And that's exactly what we're doing with the Trial by Fire program. I made the mistakes, so you don't have to. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you're interested in physical transformation, you can hit me up. You can either send me a DM on social media, or if you want me to get in touch with you, there's a link which you can use. There's a contact form. You can put your details there. Just give me a very brief explanation of what it is that you're interested in, and then I will be in touch with you. Looking forward to hearing from you all. And with that said, enjoy the podcast.
So, you know, through years, you meet people, especially, you know, I've done music for like close to 40 years now. And, you know, it's never brought me a bunch of money or income. And I've had to work jobs like, you know, most band members do. And through these experiences, you meet people. And it comes to a point where I've met people that were Christian, Muslim, you know, different walks of life that weren't pushy about their thing. And if we discussed it, it was because it was brought up, not because it was like needed to be told to me or something, you know, or of that sort. So it's, again, the individual, what resonates. Like, you know, if you quit drinking, if you quit smoking, if you quit doing this, are those bad things? No. Are they, you know, are they positive to your life? For a lot of people it is, you know. I mean, I quit drinking for the most part and stuff, you know, almost 15 years ago. I guess a Muslim could think I'm doing the right thing, you know. I don't know. But you just see.
So have you not drank at all in the last 15 years?
It hasn't been 15 years yet, but I've maybe a drink here and there, very occasionally, maybe with a meal. But I mean, almost nothing in 15 years.
That's good for you, man. That's awesome to hear, because I'm sober about 3.5 years myself. Well, from alcohol specifically, I've done DMT in that time, but yeah, I do think that it's definitely got its benefits, right?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I came to a conclusion, you know, a while back that just like yourself, health was a big thing, and you know, fitness, and I immerse myself in that, you know, and that's where and another thing, you know, I've always been, I'm it's weird. It's like if I'm around friends and people I get along with, I'll yap forever. You will have conversations all night long. If I'm in a crowd, I am not a social person. I feel uncomfortable. My wife always tells me, I don't know how you get up on stage if you feel that way. And it's like, it because the stage is a chamber, it is a place I go that I just do what I do and I don't have any problems with. But throughout the years, I never was an alcoholic or anything like that, but alcohol helped me deal with people and helped me at least loosen up and stuff. And after a while, sometimes you get too loose. Sometimes you bring out parts of you don't want to bring out. And it just got to the point where that to me, for myself, was a weakness. And I needed to get rid of it. And I needed to, you know, start dealing with these things on my own, not using something else to do it.
Mm. Well, I listen, man. I totally respect that, and then very, very interestingly, totally relate to what you're saying about how you feel in a crowd versus how you feel on a stage as well. And I think that, that's a powerful thing. But I think that genuinely, one of the main reasons why a lot of people drink is just to be able to socialize. And I kind of, I got one of the very important things that I learned, and this is a slight bit of tangent from the religion conversation that we're having, but I find it's a very valuable and a powerful topic, quite frankly, to discuss. Because for me, I think sometime around 3 or 4 years ago, I had this deep realization that everything in life, whether you like it or not, is ultimately a skill, right?
Right.
So trying to view even something that, like we always just agree, oh, I'm an introvert, oh, I'm an extrovert, and most people, by the way, think they're introverts. And then I kind of started looking at it as like, well, what if that's just the muscle that you exercise the same way that you go to the gym, the same way that you get better at playing guitar? What if you do that, and I must admit, for me, doing this podcast has been a fantastic way to go from being the person who was chronically the quiet person of every group that he was in, and then obviously also, the one that would never shut up if it was only like 2 or 3 friends together and it was a topic that he was passionate about. I've learned to exercise that muscle, so I think that once you kind of learn that you can do that you just need to exit your comfort zone, you realize more and more that you don't need to rely on something like alcohol. Like, you don't need to go and do a line in the cubicle and then come back out and then just talk everyone's ears off and just chat shit and not actually say anything of worth of value, and that's a heavy and difficult realization. But when you start acting upon it, it can be extremely valuable, I would say.
And it also, when you put yourself in a state where you're not really all yourself, I mean, how true are you being to yourself? I mean, and
Sure.
again, I'm talking about getting healthier and thinking about fit, and I'm doing this shit too. So I got vices too. I mean, it's like it. There's just things you have to weigh what's worth it, what's not, and things that maybe you used to get over challenges, you just have to step up to the plate and take them on yourself and realize, yeah, you might not get the results you want. Like, I mean, one thing about I've noticed since I haven't really drank and going out a lot is I don't go out a lot. I'm very more seclusive. My wife and I pretty much, hang out all the time. I have select friends I'll get together with, but I'm not that guy anymore hey, let's go to the bar. Hey, let's go to all these shows. Hey, it's now I realize, okay, I know the perimeters I have. I know what makes me feel comfortable, but I appreciate it more because it's truer to me. I'm not over trying things.
Yeah, that's so valuable, man. And I think that's one of those things that comes with time. Again, exercising the shadow self to kind of get to that point. I tell you something. It's a funny story, actually. So obviously in Iran, because it's the Islamic Republic, at least so far for the last 47 years, it has been. That might change very soon again, fingers crossed. But because of the Islamic laws of the country, like, for example, you cannot drink alcohol. Like, drinking alcohol, you can actually get, the first-time offenders get 80 lashes and 3 months in prison, okay? And you may argue that 80 lashes is far worse than 3 months in prison. And I would probably agree with that. But, you get that kind of level of punishment for it, and I was like almost caught on a couple of occasions whilst I was there. After a couple of benders on whiskey, that we would just buy bootleg from like dealers and shit that would show up to the house, having the bottle wrapped in like a black plastic bag. But, one of the other things is that obviously, like bacon and pork is not halal. So, oh my fucking God, bro, the moment I landed in the UK, the amount of fucking bacon and whiskey I went through in those first few months was just fucking insane.
I bet.
My cholesterol must have been through the fucking roof, but I was like almost eating it out of spite. Like, fuck you, Islamic Republic, I'm eating fucking pork, cunts. So
that's so... See, that's the whole thing I'm saying about what you dealt with, which a lot of crybabies in the United States don't realize. I mean, especially when we play other countries, I come back appreciating ours more. You know what I mean? It's like we have tons of flaws, don't get me wrong, but the freedoms we have are tremendous. And what really boggles my mind is how many people don't appreciate it and want to change that. And for the most part, we are a bunch of spoiled assholes here. I mean, that's plain and simple. A lot of people are privileged, and they're the first people that start, belly aching and giving people lectures about, how you should think, what you should think. And it's like, fuck off, live your life, I'll live mine,
Yeah, well, and what a beautiful problem that is to have, if you think about it, that you're so privileged, like I remember, and I know, some people might not like this, but it's the truth. Like, think of it like this, because I'm talking about my experience. My experience was that I had threatening situations because of playing in a metal band in Iran, playing in the underground, and, was almost caught drinking, and was almost arrested on numerous occasions. I always somehow, I don't know how, like when I look back at my life, it's literally like miracle after miracle story, where like I got away, to the point that when I came over to the UK, like the biggest thing on my mind was, right, I can finally I can play concerts, I can play black metal freely without getting like cancelled or worse, arrested. And that I could eat bacon or I could drink freely out in the open all I wanted. Like, those were my priorities. That is nowhere near as bad as what a woman would have experienced in the country of Iran. Where you've got mandatory hijab laws, you're a second-class citizen, you can't ride a bicycle in public, you can't attend a football stadium, you can't leave the country without the permission of a husband or a father or like a male figure, which is like, and I've seen so much worse things, not just from my very own close family members, but from the women of the society, including also girls who were a part of the metal scene and then literally had to like flee the country, because they were gonna arrest them and potentially execute them. But the point being that, like, I remember about a year or two ago, I think I was having a conversation about this, and I remember seeing online that I think some of the liberals from the United States, like obviously blue voters, and I don't necessarily want to shit on them for this, but they were saying that, oh, the main priority for us should be abortion rights, and that's the main priority that we're voting on. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? Like, abortion's like, it's a fair thing. I personally believe people should have autonomy over their own bodies. Just as I had the same belief throughout the scamdemic era. And I believe that people should also have autonomy if they want to get a vaccine or not. And
Right.
and that's the stance I've always taken as far as the individualism goes. But then I was thinking to myself also, like, holy shit, imagine like that being your number one thing to worry about. That's when you know you're privileged. That's when you know that you've got it good, when something like that is, and that's not to say it shouldn't be your concern, but this is just
No.
under, like, outlining the perspective of how fucking good you actually have it, that you think that should be your number one priority to vote on.
Yeah, and there's other topics that various groups hold. And I kind of want to get this with, especially being from the States, you know, the whole Republican Democrats thing. I have always, and I've to this day never voted in my life. They are both corrupt groups.
Hmm.
And as soon as one gets more power than the other one starts to do shit. A lot of people were following, Joe Biden was a complete train wreck and caused so much shit. So Trump gets back in, people think, oh, well, maybe he'll get everything back on track. And he gets in, and slowly we start seeing remnants of the 80s where God gets start putting and Christianity starts getting pushed in the forefront, which they were kind of keeping low key at the time. And freedom of speech all the time came to, well, freedom of speech, but you can't say this. And it's just it mirrors itself so much. So I don't give any relevance to anything. It's just it's all a bunch of bullshit out there. And the other thing holding this country together is what it was founded on. And believe me, you talk to people, half the people don't even like that. You know,
Yeah.
they have the whole problem and they don't go beyond the past. The biggest problem with this country is we look back at the shit we did that was bad or stupid or didn't make sense, that we started to go past, and we keep bringing it back. And we keep, the victims here are endless. Everybody has to have a woe is me story. Poor me, poor me. Or they're playing, as Anton LaVey mentioned in later writings, people that want to wear the good guy badge. Pat me on the back because I want to support the the underdog, the person that I have no connection with in any way, shape, or form, but I'm going to act like I care about them. It is all a facade. It's all lies. And I would rather people just be exactly the way they were. If you're a total asshole, be a total asshole to me. Don't fucking play a game. Just be yourself and don't hide
Mm.
what you are. And people also here like to define other people. Everyone has a label. On both sides, they give labels and shit. And the only person that doesn't give the label is the person that they're labeling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I totally understand why I don't like to go out. I really fucking don't. I
Sure.
you turn on the media, nothing positive. And you mentioned on Jackie's show drama. If
Mm.
if you came up and you saved the family in the house that was burning, compared to, oh, this guy just went off in a political debate and shot 5 people, you wouldn't even be talked about. You'd be like, big deal. But that's
Mm.
what people thrive on. They thrive on misery, despair, and shit talking. And unfortunately, that's what's getting pushed.
Well, it is, because you also have to understand that reality as a whole is a projection of our very own beliefs. Okay. So if you want to control reality, then you control what people think. By controlling what people think, you control what they project into the world. It sounds simple, but this is exactly how this works. And it's very important to be in control of our own thoughts. I remember, I've sort of referred back to this quote many, many times. I mean, Iblis has had, I think this is episode 167 now, but back in episode 20, I had my friend Giuseppe from the band Fetus Inversa, and he said a fantastic quote on that episode that I keep coming back to. And he said, what kind of egregore did we create by thinking that COVID was the end of the world? And why is that relevant? Because it's not just a conversation about COVID, but it's the idea that we literally create egregores and shape reality based on our own thoughts and the projection of our brains. I mean, crazy fucking thing that also happened, and this can happen in whichever direction, but it's like, I think this is why it's important to be in control and in full autonomy of your own thoughts, never mind your actions, but the very thoughts that you have. And like last night, I put out this post, and and it's a picture of me holding a skull that's wearing a turban. This is a concept that I had for the Great Satan, and the caption was basically one of the slogans in the Iranian opposition movement that says, until all the mullahs are shrouded and buried, this homeland will not be homeland. This morning, I wake up and there's literally mullahs dead on the news because the US and Israel have launched a full-scale attack on these pieces of shit. So it's interesting to me, like things like that, and then you really have to think, and that's not to say that I regret that at all. I'm I am as anti-mullah as you can be, but it's just the thought that whatever you're thinking, that counts. It matters, okay? Like your thoughts aren't hollow or empty. There's energy behind them. So wherever you decide to put your voice, whatever you're doing, you're channeling and manifesting things into reality. So my point being, it's not that we shouldn't have that, but that we need to be in control of that, and we need to be mindful of the kind of reality that we want to project into the world. Because if you think you're a victim, if you think life sucks, if you think the world is fucked, that is exactly the experience that life and the world is going to give back at you.
Yeah, I agree. It's the projecting is everything. And as you know, with ritual, a lot of people, especially where I'm at today, where I started from and when I studied and came from, everything just basically goes right back to yourself. And you don't need an altar for that. You don't need the burn symbols for that. You can encompass everything within yourself. Those things are beneficial to channel things and energies and stuff. But ultimately, you have to get the focus and understanding that what you put out is magic in itself, and like you said, you can project positive, you can project negative. It's up to you, but there is something out there that you can disturb or cause some kind of projection towards. And I think, mentioning COVID, that was a really good experience to realize how controllable human beings are. And if you put something in someone's mind enough, they're going to believe it. And they're going to, I was like you. I wasn't about getting the shot. I wasn't about all the propaganda. In fact, I was working overtime during that whole time, and never got sick. I got COVID the second round, which was like a flu almost. Um, so when everybody's, 15 masks in on your face and, staying 100 feet away from each other. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people need masks on their face and to stay 100 feet away from me. I'm fine with that. But it's funny how many people just completely freaked out. And isn't that what religion does? It puts you in that box that I have to obey or something's going to happen. I have to obey or something's going to happen. And
bro, you literally took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to say religion on that. Yeah.
And I mean, when you think about it, politics is becoming the new religion. I mean, holy shit. I try to stay off social media as much as possible because all I see is politics. It's like, change your fucking life. Put something out in the world that's fucking interesting. We don't need to hear the same shit constantly or hear about this person's making this problem. Well, guess what? Go do something and fix a fucking problem instead of bitching about it.
You're preaching to the choir, man. Fuck yeah. I'm totally with you on that. And exactly on that point, it's like, yeah, you're right. Like politics becomes the new religion. Like in the era of COVID, which I can't fucking believe. I was talking to my fiance earlier today that's 6 years ago now. I didn't like in my head, I didn't realize it's actually been that long since all that shit happened. But even in duration of that, it's like we were totally blaming the wrong people. First of all, like it was like the vaccinated people were blaming the unvaccinated and vice versa. It's like, hey guys, how about you focus on the people that actually made this fucking thing and, right. Put it out there, like how about you trace back the funds to a certain lab in China? But like, it's just one of those things, it became its own religion and people treated, like it was like science TM. It was like science in itself, and I'm about as pro-science as you can get. And in fact, in my worldview, I think that science and spirituality in its core sense, where it's from a practical but also curious standpoint, I think that these two are very much hand in hand and aligned, okay? And I'm not necessarily talking about faith, but I'm talking about things that humans are able to do with their minds that you cannot necessarily explain through the scope of science. I mean, there are many things that kind of sort of blur the lines between the two, things such as remote viewings and even the whole UFO thing. You want to talk about that? I think that is actually something that very much taps into the spiritual dimension of the conversation, okay, as well as the science of it, obviously. But I think that the worst of it is when people approach these things as doctrines, whether it's the doctrine of the political right or the political left or communism or Islam. I think that the doctrine-like level of thinking is always a cancer to human evolution wherever it may occur.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's with all religion. I mean, let's get to even Satanism. Satanism was, rooted basically, if you want to go way back, it was just, the heretics, the reverted, or inverted Christians, trying to blaspheme and kind of be on the other side, and there was a good chunk of my youth that I was a part of that type of thinking till I, elevated and really read the Satanic Bible. It's funny because I'm writing a book right now about my whole music history, and I kind of
fantastic
going through the whole kind of beginning parts of how I got into this and what influenced me and
can I ask when the book is sorry to interrupt your flow there, brother, but can I ask when the book might be coming out?
It's just kind of flowing the way, you know what I mean? I'm not putting a rush on it. I'm trying to give the whole thing. So
I understand.
I just started a couple weeks ago. I only got a few chapters, but I'm an old motherfucker, so it's going to take a minute, to get shit.
No problem, man. But yeah, please carry on.
Yeah, but just seeing how things change and something, because when I was growing up, I was getting fed what Satanism was from parents and the church that was Christian propaganda. So if they said, hey, Satanists do this, Satanists do that, I'm like, oh, that's what they do. And I started to do similar things, which later on you're like, okay, not really feeling this. I mean, there was even a point one time where, I I went to, and it was in my teens, I went to an occult store and I found supposed to be a replica of a pact and vow with the devil. And I remember buying it, taking it home, reading it, and going, man, I'm taking that step. I want everything. And I did the ritual, cut my hand, wrote it in blood, burned it in the fucking ceremonial bowl, and just waited. Time goes by, nothing changed. And then I'm like going, did I do something wrong? And then I go, you know what? I'm going to reread the Satanic Bible again, but I'm not going to read it in the way I read it before with all the influence. I'm going to read it without blinders.
For what it is.
Exactly. And I wouldn't, man, it was like reading a whole brand new book because I didn't have all the other bullshit warping what it was saying. And I go, man, I'm already living like that. That's what I really believe. I don't need no external being, positive, negative, good, evil. I did need the devil, and the devil was me. It was within me, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was something that was a part of me. And if I wanted to get anything in life, I had to get it, not by any spiritual, external force that would just hand things to me because I felt like I needed it. You have to have work in progress to achieve things. And in a funny way, I was like, wow, I was being just as ridiculous as the Christians, thinking, hey, pray to Jesus and you get everything you want. I'm just saying the other thing, go to the other team. So that's what really started to define my whole understanding of what I considered what Satanism was. It wasn't that, the medieval crazy stories you hear, with the devil worshippers and stuff. It was actually an evolved philosophy that, and LaVey admitted that was influenced by a lot of different things, Nietzsche, Jung, Freud, whatever. There was a lot of influence in that. And even using the best part of, Ragnar Redbeard's Might is Right, dissecting and taking the more important things out of it. And it really just helped start the journey go.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
But now, how many types of Satanists do you have out there? It is so ridiculous. And, I've had conversations, you got the LaVeyans, you got the plain out, theist fucking, devil worshippers or what, or archetypal, everything you go. It just spreads out so much now. And I didn't want to be labeled that, at all. And especially when, the Church of Satan, which I was a part of for, a decade.
Yeah.
And then the Satanic Temple came out and they were just a bunch of PC pussies anymore. And I didn't want to be labeled among that.
Fair enough.
But I also didn't want to abandon what I felt was very sincere, which was the philosophy. So I carried on the philosophy, but that label isn't worth shit to me, with everybody else making their own labels towards it.
I love to hear that, man, and this is such a relevant thing to even bring up, and I'm glad that we're getting the chance to talk about it, and to reflect from a personal perspective on that as well. I mean, part of the discussion that I was also having with Jackie, the reason why I said what I said, so I'm just gonna very quickly paraphrase what we were discussing on that episode, and I was saying that to me, yes, I started out. In fact, I was on the theistic side of Satanism, but then I kind of got to the point where it's like, well, like out of every million Satanists, like every two of them like think differently to one another. So first of all, there's no blueprint way of thought when it comes to this path. That's the first thing. Secondly, which was the more important thing, you mentioned about association. I was like, well, okay, how many people am I surrounded by or know that, or like I know through music or know of that I would consider as some form of solid role model, or as a person that I look up to who considers themselves a Satanist? And there were absolutely zero people. Most of them were absolute fucking losers, first of all, like, I mean, in the context of, I said this before, like, if you want to talk about Satanism from the Promethean philosophical aspect, where you start to discuss about humanity being a slave species made by Allah or Zeus that, is now gifted the fire of knowledge by Prometheus and is going to break free, and that, reality is a hologram, and that, you're talking about like the moon being a hollow space station made of plasma and all these things. I'm actually very interested in that topic. But when it becomes the subject of especially like extreme metal musicians who post black and white photos of themselves in like, I don't know, leather jackets and hoodies, and everyone has these fucking worn to death sigils on their like back patches or whatever, and it's like, it looks, the aesthetic is cool, but then you kind of dig into that, you start to have these philosophical discussions with some of those people. Most of them aren't capable of it to begin with, but then the ones where you get to actually talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, we are prisoners here in this reality and we're going to break free, and Azerata this and that. But then in action, they're all just fucking speed and amphetamine addicts who do nothing. All they're doing is just fucking doing drugs and pissing away their life, and they can't fucking run a business, they can't hold up a relationship together. And these are things that, as far as I'm concerned, are things that are worth value because they're difficult things to do. And if you can't do difficult shit for a long period of time, I'm gonna have a hard time respecting you as a person, and thus respecting your ideology that you're following. But to me, when I was initially attracted to the idea, it was through the scope of, well, again, going back to Iran, the idea of, you've got this benevolent deity, and I, at this point in my life, like I have different definitions of that anyway, but at the time, thinking that you literally have a prophet who married a 6-year-old, and he then consummated the marriage when she was 9, and he was an absolute retarded warlord and caused so much death and an ideology that is literally getting the people of Iran, the people of my country, but people from all across the world killed. I mean, Muslim countries can't even stop killing each other. That's the fucking irony of it all. And realizing that, well, if this is your God, if this is your prophet, like, fuck that, like I'm, like to me, if it's the path of, if you're looking at the left-hand path, once you put it in correlation to that, if anything, Islam is the real Satanism. Islam is the real, devil worship. Allah is the real devil. If he's doing all this fucking nonsensical, cruel shit on this planet, like I don't want to have anything to do with that, which subsequently, the Promethean pathway very much also aligns with the pathway of Zarathustra and Mithra, which are, of course, the key figures of ancient Iranian or Persian religions. And, and it's the pathway of the individual. That's what I like about Zoroastrianism. That's what I like about Buddhism. This is another thing, I know, a slight tangent, but I'm sure you've heard this, Vincent, when people say, as the moment you start criticizing Islam, there's always some fucking limpcock that comes out of the woodworks and says, oh, all religions are bad. Oh, really? Are they? That's like saying, oh, all crime is equally as bad. So a person who goes pickpocketing by the local store is just as bad as someone who commits mass genocide or like rapes and kills people. Like that? Fuck no. Of course they're not the same. Buddhism isn't as bad. Zoroastrianism isn't as bad. Even Sikhism, I've never seen anything like that from them. So I think that's kind of like an important thing to introduce to the conversation. As far as I'm concerned, in today's world, there's no ideology other than maybe communism that I identify being equally as evil as Islam when it comes to religion.
Yeah, I mean, well, that and I mean, right now, I would say definitely Islam is the top dog on that, totem
Sure.
pole. Christianity in the past, we all know their history. It has a good one too. And the funny thing is, no one ever questions Judaism, but that's the root of everything there. And there's those Abrahamic religions. There's, like you mentioned, there's going to be positive and negative things in those things because they have to have something to lure you in, and then the negative stuff starts happening. Stuff like Buddhist. I used to have a friend that was a Zen Buddhist, and we used to have the greatest conversations. I got to say, I probably had better conversations with him than 90% of the Satanists I've had in fucking my lifetime. It's. I think when you put religion and you follow a religion, you limit yourself. I mean, you can get positive things from anything. I mean, you could have somebody that was poor, homeless, desolate, walking down the street and just ramble something that might be totally groundbreaking. And you're like, well, I'm not going to listen to that because he's a homeless, It's a matter of, you take whatever you get wherever it comes from and don't limit yourself. And, are there good things, positive things in Christianity? Of course there is. Is there negative things that I think in Satanism? Yeah, absolutely. You just have to pick what works for you. And the whole religion, I am just a keen person. Like, I've dealt with a lot of stuff, some people like to call LaVey an atheistic Satanist. I'm not that, because I have experienced, now I'm not saying in a specific God or demons specifically, how it's written in manuscripts and such, but I believe in higher powers and things to tap into. I believe in different dimensions and things like that in a very Lovecraftian nature, which I think is very scientific if you think about it, because it's not this blind belief that poof, this thing's up in heaven or whatever. But I've had contact and experience things that I can't explain to this day, and I can't just go, well, that didn't happen. Well, it did, and so I'm very open. I always say my belief system is like the whole satanic lifestyle. My occult belief, that goes all over the place, and I like, nothing specific, and anything is, I'm willing to investigate anything in that department.
That's so interesting to hear. It's funny. I wonder if you relate to this. I was having a conversation with this lady the other night, and she asked me, she was like, well, what's actually, like, what is your religion then, if you're saying all the stuff that you're saying, kind of thing, like, what is your belief in God? And I was like, honestly, I have a lot of beliefs that maybe by 80% align with things that are in various different religions, you know, because I always saw religion as a, you know, like because it's like, just because I disagree with like a specific religion doesn't then that mean that I disagree with all of its human elements that actually are fairly solid blueprints to life. But I said that I'm kind of in a position where I consider myself to be a very religious person, but also at the same time, I am religiously homeless. I don't know how much, if that's something that you relate to.
I get what you're saying. It's just that it's like religious or religion or even spirituality to a point, because throughout time we've been conditioned to think of it as something different than I would think of it, you know? Because I think spirituality, if you were going to give it my own definition, was something that extends the self, not necessarily making us, you know, people like to think that we're more important than we are. I mean, what makes me different than the rabbit crossing the street and gets hit by a car? Because what, my brain functions better, or you know, I'm a higher level supposedly of a species. I mean, when it comes down to it, when our time's up, I absolutely believe our energy goes somewhere else. I don't think we have this personality that we have created here that goes somewhere else. I think things that we have done continue to echo if you leave a permanent mark. That's why I think a lot of hauntings and stuff like that. I think everything you do to leave an impression, it can be done, but just the continuation to be is kind of cocky and think, oh, my being is so important, it's going to continue somewhere else, and da da da. Maybe parts of you, you know what I'm saying? The energy, it flows elsewhere. But we are so concerned with like afterwards. We need to think about now, because tapping into all that stuff will help us spread wherever we want to be a part of later, you know, not necessarily mentally or, you know, as another being, but our our life force. And I know I'm probably just going in circles with this, but that has been always a big thing with me because of, you know, my good example is my parents and I, after many years, they're still alive. We're on really good terms. It's get along, no issues. And my dad had a surgery, and they messed up in the operating room with the anesthesia, and he died for a short time. And they brought him back. And you know, later I talked to him, and he's, you know, he still believes in God and stuff like that. And I go, man, I must have been fucked up. I mean, what happened? He goes, all I remember is everything went black, and then I came back, and that was it. I said, no light, no visions, no nothing. And he goes, nope. And then I thought, well, this is a person that actually believes in the afterlife. And he's giving me like his recollection of leaving for, I think, 2 minutes or something crazy. And I'm like going, wouldn't something reflect at that time? So it makes me even go, you know, appreciating where we are right now is the most important thing. And, you know, death is eventually going to come. We just don't have to fucking rush to his arms.
I think that's, well, first of all, that's a very personal thing. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, I think that, to me, I'm more than convinced that there's other things happening behind the walls of our reality. Not everything we can see with eyes. Not everything we have
Hmm.
full access to, and or if we do, we're unaware of it for the most part, or
Right.
almost don't even want to acknowledge that we do, because so much of what happens in this world, I feel like it's I feel like this life and this world is very much a game. And the best way to look at it from my perspective is that we are inside an arena of events where you're trying to move pieces of a certain puzzle, but the command of such things come from outside of the arena,
Mm.
and those can be good things and bad things. I think that there's like an overall. I know it very much. My view of the world perhaps aligns with like the view of the Armageddon, of like the battles of the good and evil. Because here's one thing that again we'll come back to. I genuinely do at this point in my life believe in the concept of good and evil. I do think that there are things and events that that there's something that is portrayed as good, okay, like in the context of especially like monotheistic religions, but sometimes even things like policies, that on the surface seem like, oh, they are there to help people, but ultimately what it does is that it actually creates more corruption and more oppression, and there's many of these things that people very proudly champion without realizing what the outcome would look like, okay?
Hmm.
Without necessarily being specific, just because simply there's so many of them, and it exists on both sides of the spectrum, or all around the spectrum, rather. And I think that, but to me, I think that it's important to understand that we're kind of in a game. The way I look at it is the following. Life's a game, and the only way out is through. Like you got to play the game, and then you can then also start discussing the conversation about, is time real? And then you can start talking about the topic of samsara. That again, once again, we're kind of here, to play different parts, and that ultimate liberty, once again, from the Promethean perspective, is to actually break free of the chains of that and completely come out of it, which is where it becomes interesting, because then like the ultimate Satanist mindset all of a sudden aligns with the idea of nirvana from the Hindu aspects, like you kind of get the shoe horse thing, and then that's kind of the infinity of the place of peace, the moment and the place where the pendulum has stopped swinging, and then we can kind of see that as being like the ultimate goal of existence as a whole, and that until the pendulum swings, you can't have peace. So like life is always running on the fuels of duality, and that is a fact. But I think the part that we all play in it, I think there's something very interesting there. I think that there's, especially when you start to talk about experiences that people have on DMT and certain psychedelics, where you start to interact with other dimensions, and you start to interact with things that are from behind the walls of reality, things that, as far as I'm concerned, are as real, if not more real, than like the table and the desk that's in front of you and I right now. And
Uh,
I think that this is where it really becomes interesting,
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because actually it was later 2000s. I tried a few rituals using some of these elements, and it definitely tapped in and opened up doors. And like I said, I believe there's other things out there, and it's not the man-made mythos of like every culture has their own of whatever it is, but there's definitely something to tap into. And my whole thing is it's always been, prove it, I'll believe it. If, and with religion and everything with the afterlife and this, no one of any religion belief has any proof of what happened. And it's going to be the biggest mystery
Hmm.
of all when we die, because either something else happens or poof, we're done. And, you know, I can agree to a point what you were saying about good and evil, but I don't really think it's all that. Good and evil just doesn't seem real, because it just depends on the person. You know what I'm saying? If you come from one culture, you might think, certain things are acceptable, certain things are not. And another culture, same thing. Who's
Hmm.
right, who's wrong? You know what I'm saying? I'm sure there's positive and negatives of both these things. That's where you have to kind of do your own personal evaluation. Yeah, I could see if you have your own compass of what is good or negative, but the term good and evil just seems so, I don't know. It just doesn't resonate with me. It never
Hmm.
really has, because some of the best good people have done the most evil things. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. You know what? Actually, that's a very fair analysis. And I think that, yeah, you're right. I mean, most of the people in the world who've done the most horrific shit ever, they thought they were doing the right thing. Okay. I think very few people would go that far doing something that they already knew was inherently wrong.
Right.
Um, and unless they were a robot or a complete psychopath, who was
Mm,
neglected at childhood or something, like this.
right.
That's kind of how I look at it. And you know what? To your point, actually, this is something that I've had to think about a lot in the last number of years. And it's like, if you look at nature, if let's say, for example, a cheetah runs after a pack of gazelles, if it manages if it manages to catch one of them and kill it and just eat it alive, is that an evil thing? Because that cheetah still needs to survive,
Right.
and nature works in these cyclical manners, and I think that sometimes it's important, even if you get like a job promotion, you're still taking that opportunity from someone else. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I also like looking at life from the scope of, there is, there's accessibility and availability for everyone. You can do whatever you want to do, instead of constantly comparing yourself to others. From a philosophical way of approaching life, I actually fully agree with that. Like the saying that there's enough cake for everyone. I like that way of thinking, because if you didn't think that, you kind of wouldn't actually get anything done, first of all,
Right.
because you'd be like, oh, fuck it. It's like the same as me, like when I was overweight and like 260 pounds, and I had another 80 pounds to lose, which I have now. If at that entry point I was to start comparing myself to like Mr. Olympia or like Chris Bumstead or someone, I would have been like, well, there's no chance I can ever achieve anything, so why the fuck do it in the first place? So
Right. Right.
choosing yourself as your main competitor can be, or as your main challenger even, can be extremely beneficial in that regards. But ultimately, outside of the performance driven philosophy, when it comes to something like, there can only be one number one, there can only be one number one, and that exists in many different facets of life. Just like the simple fact that you and I are sat here and then everyone is listening to that, we are all only our own number one, in a sense, because out of the billions of different semen that could have reached the eggs, we were the ones that fucking got lucky and made it to this side of the world, that we actually got to be alive and fucking sit here and breathe and be able to have intellectual discourse, whilst speaking each other's language, which I think that's a fucking beautiful thing. But there is, I don't think nature believes in equality when we look at it
Nope.
like that.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't, and it definitely doesn't matter if you do the right thing either, because some of the most horrendous shit gains a lot of things for those type of people. I mean, think
Mm-hmm.
of, the funny thing is, the big thing now, they talk about the whole Epstein file and all this shit. And are people really shocked that shit like that happened? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
come on, these people have money, they have fame, they have wealth, they have, connections. They're going to do shit to keep all that stuff. Is that right? No. But in this world, unfortunately, a lot of times people do that shit to fucking stay up. I think it's really up to you. Are you willing to lower yourself to do that type of shit? Or are you going to actually stand your grounds? I mean, what's more important, what you really stand for, or getting that excess or money and fame and stuff? And a lot of those people do some fucking corrupt and disgusting shit, and to kind of segue with the whole Epstein thing, and since we were talking about Satanism, a lot of people bring up in the media, these people are Satanists, these people do this, and these have satanic groups and did it. There's no fucking Satanists in those fucking, they're a bunch of rich fucks that are bored and do ritualistic stuff to entertain them stuff. Who knows, maybe they do dabble in some occult things, but it isn't a group of Satanists. You can't keep blaming a group of people to be the cosmic boogeyman on Earth. It just gets ridiculous. But I'm sorry I segued like that. It's just talking about like the world, is brutal, and to survive, sometimes things happen to survive. And I think that's where we have to make our choices, what we're willing to do, what we're not willing to do.
Well, I fully agree with you on that. I think what I will also say is that, and this is a realization that I've had, and this makes sense from a lot of different aspects. And I think this actually, if we were to really understand religion in a positive, productive way, again, not through the scope of any of these religions, but if we were to, let's say, be as optimistic as possible about it, I think it narrows down the human experience to one thing. And it's the fact that human beings are vessels to different spirits, and different spirits have different intents to play in this world. Again, the scenario which I described earlier, that the world and the reality that we live in is an arena, and it's a playing field for things that are above and below and beyond the walls of the reality as we understand it. And different people manifest different things because each person is a vessel for different spirits to take over. Did you know that's why they call alcohol spirits, or even the drink gin, we call it gin, and that's a reference to the spirits, the evil spirits, at least known in Islam, although not exclusively evil. But it's the fact that by ingesting alcohol, you're creating an entry point for other spirits to come into your vessel. And the idea of being blackout drunk, there's a scientific aspect to that, and there's another spiritual aspect to it, which is that, like when you see someone who's blackout drunk, they're doing things, they're saying things, but when you look into their eyes, it's like you're not looking at a person. It's like lights are on, nobody's home. It's just a blank expression. And the theory behind that, from a spiritual element, and one of the reasons that convinced me to stop drinking, is the fact that you have so many different spirits taking over your vessel that your very own spirit becomes overwhelmed and has to leave the vessel. It's like a car, like there's only like room for like 5 people in there. And if you invite 6 or 7, 8 people, the driver has to leave. And then those other people take over the car and they start driving around. They start crashing around. These spirits begin to abuse the body and the system that you have because it's of no consequence to them. And when you really think about it, this is exactly what happens when people get extremely drunk. They get blackout drunk. They hurt themselves. They hurt people around them because it's of no consequence to them. And I think that that's a healthy way outside of the context of alcohol to also view humans. One person who does something truly impressive and remarkable at one point in their life doesn't mean that they are going to be forever defined by that one action. And the opposite applies. One person who does a horrific thing doesn't mean that they are going to be defined by that over time. What matters is consistency of application and the frequency which we as humans, as people on this earth, choose to tune ourselves into. And I think that more and more to emphasize on the point of emphasize on the point of our conversation, this is exactly why the path of individual progression matters the most, whether it's in a spiritual context, physical or metaphysical, all of the above.
Right. Oh, I can agree with that for sure. It it's funny too when you speak about alcohol. What's the old saying? Oh, when people are drunk, they say what they really mean. No, they don't.
Yes,
You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
Yeah.
And that influence is definitely there.
Mm.
But no, the whole thing of individuality is so important, and it just goes in with groups too. And I'm sure you've dealt with it. You know, you might hang out with a group of people. Maybe you have a few people that kind of resonate with what your ideas are. Some just there for the ride. Some just think it's a novelty. And there's always weak links in like relying on the group. You know what I'm saying? It's when it comes down to it, you have to be structured within yourself. You need to know what matters. I can honestly say I am not a big fan of mankind. And uh but I'm not saying I hate all people either. You know, uh it's almost like the term Satanism not being an actual devil worshiper or worshiping Satan as a deity, uh, be a misanthrope. I'm that for the most part, but I take a lot of value in people that I come across that I get respect or realize that they are a person above those herds. That's why as few friends as I have, personal friends, it's because I value them so much and I do anything for them because uh, the average person usually will let you down. And I'm not saying you never give a person a chance to prove themselves and just walk around the world like fuck everybody, you know. But you also have to realize that you have to be selective of what you let and who you let in your life, because that is a definite reflection on how you're going to end up living your life. And it will have results in what you do. And throughout my lifetime, I've had many good and many bad experiences. And I just throw away that doesn't work or that's a bad element in my life and move on and find something that does or some people that do. And that's why I think you're like a very social person and you say you get along with everybody, you're the life of the party, you have everybody just patting you on the back and shit. You get this false attitude of, hey, I'm great, you know, I'm awesome.
Yeah, it's fake. It stinks.
Yeah. What happens when they aren't there anymore? Are you still awesome? Or are you going, where are the people? Where are these people that I need to make me feel like I'm worthy? And that's where when you deal with the self, you understand that's the priority. Even though those within your, you know, circle are just as important, you have to have that fucking solid foundation of yourself before you can go anything beyond that. And, you know, some people call that limited. I'm fine with that. You know, I value the people I've met that I get along with. And I would rather go to a concert or something with one person that I really connect with than 12 to just say, hey man, you're fucking great. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And tell you what, I think that's a beautiful note to actually bring the conversation to a conclusion, man. Vincent, brother, what a fucking fantastic conversation this has been with you, man. Truly, truly enjoyed having you on the show, and yeah, man, I think this has been good. I think this is a good place to bring it to an end, and I think that hopefully a lot of the people listening to this as well have taken a few points, and I think these are the important conversations that really we ought to be having.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the conversation too. Like I said, I've been admiring your work. Uh, you are a great interviewer and a great guest too. I mean, it's like I've enjoyed what I've saw, and I wish you the continued success, brother.
Thank you so much, man. Look, the feeling is mutual, and I certainly hope this is not the last time we get the opportunity to have a phenomenal discourse like this. And yeah, so tell you what, to wrap this up, just to uphold the tradition, is there anything that you've got coming up with either Acheron, or I know anything that you've got coming up, music or whatever projects you want to kind of let people know about to come and check it out?
Well, Acheron is back. We were signed to Hell's Headbangers Records, and we will be recording our new album this year. Looking very forward to that. I think the last one came out in 2014, so it's been a minute. And working with some great guys. We're supposed to play Maryland Death Fest coming up, the Dead by Dog 2 Fest in Cleveland, Ohio, and we're playing the Drums of War festival in Barcelona, Spain, too. So still got some energy left for this war machine. It's been a while, and I really think if people like the past stuff, it's music that you'll expect Acheron to be.
That's fantastic news to hear, man. Best of luck to yourself and the band. Not that you need it, but power to you guys. Again, I'm a long time fan. I've been listening to you guys for much longer than you might realize, So again, I very much appreciate the conversation today. And to everyone who's been listening to this episode, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure you support Vincent Crowley and Acheron, and we'll see you on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations.
Yes.